And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting on March 17, 2025. And it is 5:15. And present for our meeting this evening is Michael Beck, Councillor Beck, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Trumbull stepped out and should be back shortly. Also around the table, we have Councillor Leonard and Councillor Mahler. And we have Finance Director David Little with us this evening at the table as well. And it looks like the first thing on our agenda is to discuss some bids.
Our first bid tonight is 2 patrol vehicles for the police department. We have the opportunity to purchase 2 brand new Ford Explorer hybrids from Darlings Ford using the state of Maine's master bid agreement with Darlings. The 2 vehicles would be $50,509 each for a total of $101,018. The police department did have in their capital budget to replace patrol vehicles this year. The budget amount was $189,000, so these 2 are within that budget amount. So we're looking forward, and this happens on occasion. We will piggyback on a state contract for certain things as we get better pricing, saves us the expense of having to go out to bid. So we think the pricing is fair. So we're looking for permission to move forward with purchasing the 2 vehicles from Darlings Ford.
Okay, do you just need a thumbs up and a nod, or do you need a vote?
A vote.
Okay, all right. Do I have a motion to accept the bid for $101,018? I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next bid is for auditing services. We did go out to bid for auditing services. We received quite a number of responses during the question period, which we replied back, questions which appeared to come from auditing firms from out of state. But when we came to the day for us to open up the bids, we received 1 response. And that response was from our current audit service, which is running Christine and Alette out of South Portland. For the first year cost would be $174,500. I will say I know that our audit is fairly complex. We have 7 enterprise funds, multiple funds within the city itself, plus the school department. We have over 80 separate grant agreements that all have to be tested, that meet both federal and state requirements. So there is a lot of detail to it. There's 8 various federal and state agencies that we have to comply with the rules and the standards. So my expectation is, with the limited number of accounting firms in the state of Maine, or potentially even outside of the state of Maine, that the size of our audit was something that they did not feel that they could fit into their current work schedule, because every community in Maine needs an audit, so they're already getting built in, and there just wasn't capacity. There was my expectation as to why we only received the 1. Again, from a staff perspective, we are happy with our KO's performance. They have been our auditors for the past 13 years. The bid would have our audit being 1,038 hours to complete, compared to like the town of Brunswick or the city of Brewer, who they also do the audits for at 652 or 581 hours. Ours is a lot more complex, it eats up a lot more time. Obviously, we've had some issues getting them filed on time. Part of that has been on our side, being understaffed, especially in the finance department, as well as community and economic development, which is where a lot of the grants are. They're fairly back to full staff now. We do have an assistant finance director on staff that started last week, came back this week, so that was a good sign. So we're almost back to full staff in the finance department. Our RFP did include maintaining the normal schedule that we've always asked for in the past, which is a fully completed and issued financial statements by the end of the year. Our KO has committed to that, as they always have. They are at least willing to adjust schedules as needed based on our needs as well as our staffing issues. And so our recommendation is to go forward with them. We are required to have an independent auditor, so we do need to have 1 on file. They're the only ones that replied to the bid. So we're looking to move forward with them. This again will go to full council next week, because the 3-year contract is in excess of the $250,000.
Okay. Any questions? Counselor Beck?
My first problem with this is, it's a 45% increase over last year. For the first year, that's 45% more. 120,000 is what we paid them last year. This year they want, over the next one, 175,000 almost. That's 45% more.
Last year was, I'm thinking closer to 140.
No, it's 120,000. In fact, if you look under your addendum here, it says here, the all-inclusive cost for the fiscal year 2024 audit was 120,000.
Oh, in the questions, okay. I was. And that was what was charged. I was thinking there was some additional stuff that might have been some other auditing things. Yes, there was an increase in the cost. I would agree with that. And also the increase over years 2 and 3. A lot of that has to do with the number of reporting requirements and the new standards that have come out. The original bids, back in 24 and 23, we did not have the Sabita, which is the online subscription-based ones that require a lot of additional testing and documentation and reporting. I do know that within the next year or two, there is another pronouncement that is coming out that based on early talks is essentially a revamp of the entire set of financial statements and how they're being proposed and disclosed and how the changes, presentation changes to the thing. That will require a lot of additional testing as well. So that's factored in. I do agree that it's a large number. It is allocated out citywide. It's allocated out to the various funds, including the enterprise funds. So that impact is not a full impact to the general fund itself.
Yeah, I just feel like, we really we're real patient with them, with their staffing issues and everything else, and, to have it kicked back to us at a 45% increase when they're the only ones just doesn't sit well with me. We have nothing to compare it to here. And I'm just wondering, I see that a lot of people sent questions all from out of state, but I know that in years past, from when I was looking online, that the city would actually reach out and send the RFP to auditors directly. And I'm wondering if, there's a way, I can't believe that we can't find another auditor anywhere in the state who's at least willing to give us a bid that we can compare to. Cause that's a steep increase. I just can't justify it.
Seeing the city manager head to the table.
Yeah, I can't speak for the competitiveness, but what I can speak to is we've gone from 65 audit firms in this state to 19. And those that are willing to do governmental audits, there's a far higher risk, professional risk for them associated with governmental audits. So there are virtually maybe 3 firms in the entire state that do governmental audits.
Right. I will say the last time we went out to bid, which was in 2018, we only received 2 bids.
Correct. The other one was from out of state, I think, it was New Hampshire, wasn't it?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not surprised that there's only one respondent from the state of Maine.
Well, I am, someone somewhere has to bid. That's a huge increase in, for as much as we've thrown them under the bus the last few years and blamed them for the delays. And the fact that now we're asking all these other firms to do it on time. And the only bid we're gonna go with is the one firm that's consistently proven over the last 3 or 4 years they can't do it on time.
But it's
That
not,
doesn't add up.
it's not just them that's not doing it on time.
Right.
Our, part of this is exacerbated by the lack of staffing that we've been able to maintain in finance. Cause they can't audit what we don't hand them.
Right. We have to meet our deadlines in order for them to meet their deadlines. And for the last few years, finance has not been fully staffed for 3 years. The CNED department had a complete turnover. So all new staff coming in with no training, because all staff had left by the time they were hired, had to learn the job, learn where the grant information was and provide that to the auditors for testing. And it took a significant amount of time for that learning curve to kick in.
Council Leonard?
So I'm having a really hard time hearing all this, especially hearing there have been many times over the course of this last previous budget where we're just waiting on the auditors. I remember you specifically, David, you were telling us basically 2 times a month, this should be done next week. This should be done next week. I've been hearing that sentence for the better part of over 6 months. And when this was first being discussed, if this, all the blame was being put onto RKO. And then when the discussion came to questioning whether we should even continue the services of RKO, all of a sudden, reminded, just to remind you, we did have a full finance staff. Your words, we had a full finance staff earlier this year. And I get it that some people were had leave or some sort of a issue regarding their time here. But where was all the preparatory work in order to meet the auditors with these requests? Like, how did we take so long to respond to these auditing requests? And the only reason I'm having these, like, these words right now is because this is a monopoly effect. How are we, like, how is RKO as the sole bidder with so little market pressure, regardless of where you come from? Because it doesn't just have to be Maine, it doesn't have to be New England. We go all the way out to California to get an auditor out there if we wanted to. But having a sole bidder creates a monopoly effect. How are they supposed to improve their pricing or their delivery times if there is no market competitor? And especially for a 3-year extension? No, especially on that point. Like, I would opt for a 1-year contract with 2 optional annual renewals based on performance, but the current state is it right now. I mean, I'm not on the committee, so I don't vote on this, but if this goes to council, 100% not going to be voting on this as is right now. I mean, this is, I do not have confidence right now with this current bid process. I would direct, if I were on this committee, I would direct staff to reach out to as many different auditors all across the country to get an actual pricing comparison to what RKO is giving us. Because to Councilor Beck's point, a 45% increase. I get that there are risks associated with that, but that is not okay to have a monopoly effect, especially given the tumultuousness of the previous auditing session.
Can we, so if there, how is this put out to bid? What are the options? And apparently, you know, we have to have the audit. So how does this, what other options would we have with us not being in compliance? If we, you know, how is that process done?
Well, the bid went out with offering a 3-year contract. It was put out publicly on the website. It was available to the entire world that has the access to our website. And we have that seen that people monitor our website for other bids. The fact that, yes, I understand that the pricing that the committee has a concern with the pricing, but RKO had no way of knowing they were going to be the only bid. There was no reason to assume that there wouldn't be multiple bids that was received. So it's not like they inflated their price on purpose, thinking they were going to be the only one. And in regards to, I'm not sure exactly when a comment would have been made that the finance staff was fully staffed, because our previous assistant finance director left in June of last year, and we just hired a new one last week. So that position as the number 2 in the finance department had been empty. We had offers put out for other people that we thought was going to fill the position, and those never worked out. And there was issues, yes. I know that I've gone to meetings and said, hopefully this is when it's going to be done. Hopefully it's going to be done. There is, as we talked about in the memo, and as I've talked about here, the city is very complex in the fact that we do a lot of stuff. We have a lot of leases. We have a lot of grants that we get. And every time the auditors pull one for testing, if there is something that is found that is not big enough issue that, you know, it may or may not become a management letter comment or material finding, but they may have to pull more to do additional testing. So if they pull something and the policy requires a signature and the signature is not there, or whatever the reason may be, they are required to pull additional stuff for additional testing. Also, because there's issues with us meeting the timelines that we should be meeting, and I agree, we should be meeting those, that they run into other clients. We're not their only client. They have multiple other towns that they work on, plus their tax clients. So we have to then fit into their their timeline. We understand that it's an issue and we understand that it's been an issue, which is why the bid put out specifically that here's the timeline that we expect to have. And, you know, as long as we can do our part, they will do their part and this will be issued on time. Again, I can't say for sure. I want to sit here and promise that all over the council, but I don't want to be here in 6 months to say that promise got broken. We do as much as we can to provide them what it is, but we also have other things that need to get done. Day-to-day operations have to happen. Everyone still has to get paid, the bills still have to get paid, and there's limited amount of staffing to get that work done. So we focus as much as we can on what we need to do at the time and as quickly as we can to complete the testing requirements. And then it's not just the finance department, it's spread out. There is testing at, you know, the school department. They've had staffing issues as well. Like I said, community and economic development. They spend a lot of time at the airport. They spend a lot of time at the Cross Center. It is spread out through the city and all of that requires testing. All of it requires responses back. And we try to coordinate it the best that we can.
Council Leonard?
Portland, South Portland, Lewiston, and Auburn, who does their audits? And how do they compare to the amount of hours that RKO does for the hours that they're projecting for us? Because again, the 1,038 that they're saying that they're due, that they're gonna do for us, as opposed to the 652 for Brunswick, I have a really hard time, like I get that we have a lot of different variables going on within within the city's finances, but I have a really hard time thinking that we're just such a complex city that no other auditor is willing to just even throw out an offer. Like even if it's like egregiously higher than RKO's. Like if RKO has the cheapest offer, okay, we don't really have much of an option there. But the fact that it's just RKO, it really sets a bad taste in my mouth, especially considering the previous year. It's like I would like to see, but before we even vote on this at council, just a comparison. Who are Portland, South Portland's, Lewiston's, and Auburn's auditors? What are the hours that they're putting in there, and what is the pricing that they're doing? Because if it's something similar, or we're getting a cheap buck for our auditing services, that's fantastic. But as of right now, no, I am not comfortable with this in any way, shape, or form. Like you might have me at a 1-year contract with 2 optional annuals, but no, this is this is not okay.
Council Mallon?
Oh, I think Beck's on the committee. I'll let you.
Well, you haven't spoken yet, sir.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious. How many hours did they budget for last audit as compared to what they're asking for the next one?
I don't have that information with me. I can get that for you though.
I'd be interested to see how many hours they budgeted. I'd interested to see what their travel expenses were. I mean, it's difficult to judge this having only one there, and we really don't know what the makeup of the money of the amount is. And do we have a clause for if they don't meet the deadlines, there's a penalty?
It's not currently built into the contract. I mean, we can
Well,
certainly.
with our
look at
past
doing that.
experience, it seems like it should have been. Granted, if it's our fault, then we can't do much about it, but if it's their fault, we've provided everything and they don't complete, I think we need to stick to poke them with.
Mhm. We can look at that into the contract as a possibility. Yes, because we do that in some other contracts. We have
Right, I know
penalty
you do.
clauses in certain contracts.
And I was gonna say, I believe that we have not met our deadline for the last 3 years. So even with that provision,
Right, yes.
it wouldn't have changed. And I was just pulling up, there are tons of articles. And I'm trying to get them right now. It talks about every school, every municipality having a difficult time finding auditors. You find lots of communities and lots of other levels of government audits. So I know it's upsetting for all of us. But we're
Right.
not that it's great, but we're not as behind as many others. We're
Right.
still within the fiscal year.
Right, as the city manager mentioned, there are communities that are, right, they're still back looking to file their 2022 or 23 audits. yes, we don't want to be 3 months behind when we would normally file. We don't want to be 5 months behind when we would normally file. But it is certainly much better than being a year or two behind, which could impact federal funding. It could impact bond ratings. There's several impacts that it could be. Even with our lateness so far, that has not occurred with the city of Bangor, because when we do issue, there are no significant issues or findings. And again, a lot of it is having an experienced and trained staff that can get what needs to be done and allocate the time to do that, which hopefully we're at the point now with the departments that are primary to working on the audit are all essentially at this point in time fairly fully back to staff, with enough time between now and when we would start preliminary work in June to sort of get up to speed and get settled into the job to be able to get this done. The real issue is whether or not there's any new pronouncements that come out that may impact us, but we will deal with those as we come, as we always have over the last 30 years. And like I said, not trying to, the council is within the right to refuse the bid. It was the only bid. It was a fair and open bidding process, just like every other RFP that we have. And so it does seem disingenuous to start directly contacting auditing firms, which I have a feeling we're going to be very difficult to find one. As the city manager mentioned, there's only 19 left in Maine that operate, that still have every community in Maine that they still need to audit. Yes, there is a chance of going outside of the state of Maine. I will say that having an offsite auditor outside of the Maine, we did not say that that was a refusal within the RFP. We were willing to look at those if someone proposed, but it will be extremely difficult to do an audit completely by remote unless we're going to be paying them to come travel on site to do stuff. Doing everything remote is going to slow up the audit even more.
But
And so I was just gonna say, I would suggest, I think there's an ask for additional information.
Mhm.
So what we'll do is we'll pull back and get you the comparative information as to the size of the community, the audit firm, the number of hours and the fees. So at least you
Yes.
can feel better as to whether or not the price is competitive.
Yeah.
But I have to push back. This is not disingenuous to like roll back an RFP if there's just one bidder. Again, it's a monopoly effect. If the only bidder is the previous person or the previous entity that has done our audit and they're hiking up a 45% increase, and how are they to be expected to do better services or to be on a better timely fashion if there is no other competition for us to compare and look at? Like, that's what we need to see. We need to see a comparison. And so even if it's just one other person, someone from Oklahoma, someone from California, someone from Alaska, I don't care. One bidding process after last year's not a great audit session. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable just going forward with this current RFP with just one bidding process.
Counselor Beck?
Well, if there's 19 in the state, that means we just have 18 more to contact. Because looking at, in the past, we have reached out to them directly. Now, they don't all respond, but I guess I would feel a lot better if I had a list of, yep, here's the 19 we reached, and here's the 3 or the 2 or even just the 1 that responded. Because if all we did was put on the website, we gotta hope that they just happen to be Googling Bangor, happen to be watching our website. It just, at least if we send it to them directly and they don't respond, that's different, where we've done it in the past, at least according to these documents, and I'd like to see us do it again, of just reach out and make sure that they're aware of the possibility. If there's only 19 in the state, that's a less daunting task than when there was 40 or 50 or more.
So can I get a consensus of where the councils are that are on this committee as to if they want to send this back for more information?
I
Councilor
share the,
Campbell?
well, yes, I share the frustration, but I think it's unfortunate, the time we've opened the bid, everybody that's gonna submit anything now can see what this bidder bid. So I think the process would not be fair to anybody if we open it up again. That being said, I think it would be helpful what the city manager suggested, if we could see what other municipalities pay, how many hours they have, if we are getting a fair bid, if this seems fair. I mean, I agree, that's a 45% increase. On top of the service we've got, doesn't seem like the best deal for the city, but to rebid it now after everybody can see what's been bid is not gonna, I don't, in my opinion, it isn't a fair process. So I would like to see what other towns are paying. They're comparable. I mean, we got an airport, we got a, we're more complex than a lot of cities, but I think we'd probably be similar to Portland.
Portland is the one that we are most closest to from a fiscal perspective.
So are we,
And I had one other question. You said it's 1,063 hours in the bid. So if they only use 800 hours, do we get bid this, we pay this price, we pay for 800 hours if they only spend 800 hours?
Right, if the audit becomes shorter than it is, we only get billed for the time that
Okay.
they spend.
Okay.
So it's not a fixed price
Mhm.
necessarily for it. It depends on
It's
if they're on
that's
site.
assumed how many hours.
Right, it's assumed the number of hours that is needed to
And if
complete
they,
the
and
audit.
if it's 1,400 hours,
We
they
pay
eat
more,
the
right.
300.
Oh, they do?
No,
If
they
it's
don't
over-
come back to us.
Okay, if it's
They
under.
don't typically
so-
come back to us
okay,
unless
right.
we had a significant change in the number of federal programs that we had to have audited.
Council Fournier, did you have any?
I'd agree, it wouldn't be a fair process if we sent this back out again. I'm fine with looking at, maybe shortening the term,
Mhm.
if we go 2 or 1.
Okay.
And we can do maybe, then we can talk to them and do one with 2 one-year extensions. Most of our contracts include a provision that we have a right to terminate without cause.
right.
Is that if we're not happy, we can terminate the contract, and that's typically built into all of our contracts.
So I guess what I need is a proposal to send this back, to the finance director for a little more, explanation to the increase and maybe some comparison.
Yep, yeah, so we have time. We'll pull it from next week's council, and we'll schedule this for the next finance committee with additional information.
Do I have a motion for that?
So move.
Second,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next item tonight is stream monitoring. We also went out to bid for this process. We received 2 bids. This is to comply with our EPA consent decree. We initially started it back in 2015 with 4 streams. We are now up to 6 streams at 7 various sites. There was 2 bids, one for 233,000 and one for 249,000. The cost of this bid and the monitoring these streams is essential for us to comply with our EPA agreement. The more that we can maintain the equipment, we get better, higher quality data. The recommendation from staff after reviewing the 2 proposals is to go with Stillwater Environmental Engineering out of Orono at the 233, the low bidder. We've had past experience with Stillwater and all of their work has been excellent. So there is funding within this is part of the budget for the stormwater fund. There is budget in their operating budget to cover whatever contract may cover up through the end of fiscal year 25 and the fiscal year 26 going forward for the future. Contracts would be part of their annual budget request, which it is currently. It would just continue onward. So staff is looking for approval to move forward with Stillwater Environmental.
Any questions? Counselor Dean?
When you are comparing these proposals, I'm sure you have much more data than what we have here.
Mhm.
So would you say that these are comparable? I mean, is it always apples to apples, or do you sometimes see a difference in the price depending on what the proposed?
Right, I fairly certain that they're apples to apples, but Rich May is online and I am going to unmute him, I think, and let him.
Yes, so these are basically apples to apples. There was one limitation put on the proposal by Haley Ward. And that was just to protect themselves if there's too much time into the biomonitoring line. That was the only difference between the proposals in terms of scope of work.
Any other questions? All right. Do we have a motion to accept the bid for 233,360 by Stream Monitoring?
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you. Thank you, Rich. Our next item tonight is a council order. This would authorize the police and fire departments to apply for a grant from the state of Maine Public Safety Health and Wellness Reimbursement Fund of $183,384. This fund will allow for a program that will screen our public safety employees who may be at risk of cardiac issues or metabolic screening. It's a reimbursement type program, so the request to apply for $183,384 would assume that it's 100% participation. It is voluntary, so our true reimbursement under the program would be the actual participants from public safety that join the program. There is no local match that is required, so we're just looking for approval to send this on to full council next week to apply for this grant.
Any questions from council? Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Let's see this.
Thank you.
Next time on council.
Our next item is also another council order. This is to allow the fire department to apply through a grant through the Maine Emergency Medical Services Stabilization and Sustainability Program for EMS related equipment. I will say that there has been a change. I was contacted by the fire department today. It's a funding formula for this grant that comes up. The initial thought was that we would receive a full $200,000, which is what we received last year. But Bangor's allocation under the formula is actually going to be $192,564.77. So the council order that will be next week, assuming this is approved next week, has already been adjusted to show that the reflect amount that we would actually receive, which is not the 200 that we received last year, but 192. Again, this would be used for EMS related equipment and training. It's a formula funded, so the money is there. It is for us. We just have to apply for it. Again, there's no local match, and we're looking to use the funds for new stretchers for the ambulances, training and software for our staff. So we're looking for approval to move this forward to full council.
Any questions?
We move approval.
Okay. We have approval.
Thank you. Our last item tonight is regarding some LDs.
Oh,
The city
yes,
manager
I'm
coming
sorry.
to the table.
Mhm.
You mean the item I put on your agenda?
Yes, that you added.
Debbie Lawrence, city manager. So Wednesday morning in taxation, there are 5 different, LDs being proposed that would impact the amount of homestead exemption or the amount of exemption for seniors or the amount of exemptions for veterans, et cetera. So while the state continues to work to find a way to provide tax relief, the issue is any of those exemptions do not have a reimbursement back to the city. So in essence, if there is a lessening of tax value, but there's no return of money, then there is no tax relief provided to the residential homeowner. I would like to suggest that the council consider encouraging the state to expand their property tax fairness credit, which is part of the annual income tax filing. It's an existing program that's in place for either homeowners or renters. And if they want to provide more targeted relief, that the best way to do that would be to do it through that existing credit.
So what do you need from us, or are there any questions?
Not a question. I was just gonna say that I'd be supportive of that.
Okay. Basically just need a nod from us, okay? I think we have it.
One question.
Oh, sorry.
Would there be any reason not to do this? Is there any?
Any reason not to submit the testimony?
Yes.
No, I mean, I think what happens is we're all wholly focused on how we're gonna provide property tax relief. And just by merely exempting property, it doesn't get it done. I think so pointing that out and suggesting that they expand their existing program to provide more targeted relief is hopefully helpful.
Right. The initial presumption may be that if we're not supporting exempting property.
Right, that
But
we're
that's not-
somehow against the property.
Right, but
tax.
that's really not the case, because what happens if you exempt property without some type of reimbursement, that just lowers our taxable piece, which requires us to increase how much we have to withdraw, bring in
How
from
much we have the
taxes.
tax
The
rate.
tax rate, so the tax rate would go up even though the exemption went down, without some type of reimbursement. So we're just trying to make it equitable, and there's other programs the state has that they could still accomplish the same thing.
Right.
Without a direct impact to the mill rate.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, do you have anything else for us?
That is all I have for tonight.
Okay. If Nothing else, then that concludes our meeting at